After almost 2 decades in nursing, I can tell you I've seen just about everything people hope you'll never see. But nothing unsettled me more than something I saw on a lonely stretch of highway outside Fresno in July of 2019. And the worst part is, I still don't know what I saw. That summer was brutal. Long shifts, constant overtime, and triple-digit heat that made the AC at the hospital run non-stop. My mom had been in Bakersfield for a procedure, and I had gone to stay with her for a few days to help out. By the time I left to drive back to Fresno, it was already pushing past 11 at night. I didn't mind the drive. The highway at night is usually calming. That night, though, it felt even more isolated. Barely another car out there. I had the windows cracked just a little, enough for the dry summer air to cut through the stale AC. My favorite part of night driving is that sense of solitude, like the world has gone quiet for you. I had music low, just enough to keep me alert. The highway was straight, cutting through farmland and scattered orchards. The kind of landscape that looks almost endless when your headlights sweep over it. I was maybe 40 minutes from home when I saw it. At first, it didn't register. My headlights carved out a shape on the road ahead. Small, upright, still. For a split second, I thought it was a traffic cone or maybe some debris. But the closer I got, the more it looked human. A child, standing dead center in the lane, motionless, facing my car. That creeping pressure hit my chest, and I moved without thinking. I eased my foot off the gas and started to slow. I've worked enough shifts in pediatrics to know what a kid looks like when they're lost, confused, or in shock. That's exactly how this looked. Except, what child would be standing in the middle of Highway 99 at nearly midnight? I flicked my high beams on. The figure was small, no taller than maybe my son's height when he was 7, shoulders hunched, head dipped. I remember saying out loud, "Oh my God." My first thought was that it was a runaway or a kid who'd wandered from a crash site. I threw on the hazards and slowed hard, trying to stay calm, but my body wasn't listening. That's when I noticed movement. Off to the right of the road, where the tree line started, something shifted. 2 taller shapes, just inside the shadows. They weren't kids. I squinted, trying to make sense of them. My headlights barely reached that far, but I could see them clearly enough to know they weren't fence posts or tree trunks. They were figures, and they were standing there, watching. The hair on my arms prickled. I looked back at the child in the road, still motionless, not moving toward me, not away, just waiting. That was the moment something in me snapped into survival mode. I can't explain it except to say every protective instinct I've ever had, every time I'd shielded my son from running into traffic or stepped in front of a combative patient, hit me all at once. I didn't stop. Instead, I swerved left, around the figure, keeping just enough distance that I didn't hit it. My car jolted as I crossed the center line and gunned the accelerator. As I shot past, I flicked my eyes to the rearview mirror. And then I saw them. The 2 figures from the trees stepped closer to the road, almost like they were waiting to see what I'd do. I didn't wait to find out more. I pressed harder on the gas. The speedometer climbed past 80. For the next 20 miles, I checked my mirrors constantly. Every pair of headlights in the distance set me on edge. My breathing wouldn't steady, and my hands gripped the wheel so hard it felt like it might snap the thing in 2. The child had never moved. Not once. Was it even a child? When I finally pulled into my driveway after midnight, I sat in the car for a long time with the engine still running. My house lights felt too far away, like I'd have to cross a mile of darkness just to reach them. The next morning, after barely sleeping, I called the Fresno County Sheriff's Office. I explained everything. The child, the 2 men, the way they moved. The deputy said they'd send a car to check the area. Later, they called back. Nothing found. No child, no men, no tracks. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but the details were too clear in my mind. For weeks after, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I drove home late, I avoided back roads and kept my doors locked even at red lights. My coworkers at the hospital teased me a little when I told them the story. One of the older nurses said, "Sounds like bait. They distract you with a kid, then grab the car when you stop." Another said it happened once to her cousin outside Bakersfield, though she admitted it might have been rumor. Even my son asked me why I kept looking at the rear view when we drove together. I didn't tell him the truth. I just said, habit. The worst part isn't the fear. It's the questions. If it really was a child, did I abandon them? Could I have saved them? Or was it never a child at all? Just a lure? A doll, maybe, or someone small pretending. And the two in the tree line, what were they waiting for? To this day, I don't know. But I do know this. I will never, ever stop on a dark highway again. I work nights at a hospital in Tallahassee. Back in April 2021, the board was a mess. 2 nurses out, another floating to ICU, 1 on leave. I picked up a double because I always say yes. 12 hours on paper turned into 15 because someone always spikes a fever at shift change. By the time I clocked out, the sky looked like dishwater and my scrubs reeked of disinfectant. I remember small details. A protein bar wrapper stuck in my pocket, my badge reel catching on the seatbelt, the smudge of sanitizer on my steering wheel. My phone sat at 6%, barely hanging on the charger. I cranked the AC low and enjoyed the hour after a night shift where the city feels muted, like someone turned down the volume. Half a mile later, the gas light blinked. I argued with it out loud, then pulled into a mid-sized station off Appalachia Parkway. They've got cameras over every pump, something I always scan for as a woman working odd hours. The lot was quiet. A semi idled at the edge. A moth battered itself against a canopy light. I tapped my card, slid the nozzle in, flipped the lever, and thought about my bed, waiting 20 minutes away. I didn't notice the first man until he was suddenly at my shoulder, close enough to feel wrong. His voice was low, flat. "Don't look behind you." It wasn't hissed or dramatic, just informative. Stale smoke clung to him. My first reaction was irritation. Too tired to play games. I said, "I'm good, thanks." He didn't move. "Don't turn around," he said again. So, of course, I turned. On the far side of my car, crouched by the passenger door, was someone with a hood up, hand testing the handle. The way his fingers pressed and flexed made it clear he was checking if it would open. I didn't scream. I yanked the nozzle free, shoved it back into the pump. The crouched figure didn't run. He just drew his hand back and set it on his knee, like nothing had happened. The man at my shoulder said, "Lock your doors." I already had my keys in hand. I slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and hit the lock button. Immediately, the passenger handle twitched. Just a light pull, testing again. My heart nearly stopped. The first man raised his palms, stepped back a few feet under the lights. I got a better look. Hooded green jacket, boots, tired eyes. He didn't push closer, just watched me. "You're okay," he said through the glass, then looked toward the crouched figure. I put the car in drive. If I peeled out, I'd swing close to him. Reversing would take time. I decided loud was better. I revved, tires squealing as I angled wide. The crouched figure scooted back, hands now tucked away. The man in the jacket gave me room. I saw his face just once. I cleared the canopy, hit a green light like it was waiting for me. My hands shook just enough to tilt the wheel a degree off center. I muttered, "You're fine, you're moving." At the next red, I called non-emergency. I gave cross streets and said, there were 2 men. One told me not to look, another was by my car. I left. It sounded absurd, like a campfire story. The dispatcher thanked me, said they'd send a car. Home was the same. Porch light late to flicker on, bag dumped by the door, one shoe spattered with gas. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter edge, then showered until steam blurred the mirror. I texted my sister, "Weird at the gas station. Call later." Then slept in fragments, waking with that false sensation of falling. By noon, a voicemail waited. Officers swung by, saw nothing. Clerk reported nothing. Report filed. My sister texted, "Creepy. Fill up before shifts, okay?" I promised I would. For weeks, the scene replayed in flashes. Washing a patient's hands, I'd picture fingers under my car handle. Charting vitals, I'd hear the nozzle clunk. I added a flashlight to my bag, cleared my passenger seat for quick slide-ins, kept my phone in my pocket instead of buried in my bag. Preparedness became routine. What I can't shake is the ambiguity. Was the man warning me a helper or part of it? His calm tone, his raised palms, they argue he was trying to protect me. But his closeness, the way he assumed authority, makes me doubt. Why step into my bubble instead of calling out from a distance? Why choose words like that? Don't look behind you, as if rehearsed. 2 nights later, curiosity pulled me back. On Google Maps, buried reviews mentioned men loitering near pumps and someone tugging at a door handle. So maybe not random, maybe a pattern. Eventually, I did return, but only during daylight. The clerk with purple bangs assured me the cameras worked. She said it like it was a normal thing. We pull footage for the police all the time. That didn't reassure me. A tech on my floor later said her cousin had someone climb into her car while she pumped. She chased him out with pepper spray. 3 of the 5 women at my lunch table had similar stories. Different towns, same setup. That's when I realized what happened wasn't rare. It was just my turn. I didn't file a full statement. Nothing happened. No theft, no assault. Just a warning, a crouched figure, and a handle twitch. But in my head, it keeps echoing. The stillness of that crouch, the certainty that he could make me doubt what I saw. And the other man, maybe accomplice, maybe rescuer, I'll never know. Now I fill up before shifts, pick busy stations, stand with my back against my car, never the lane. I keep the dome light off so my car isn't lit like a stage. I remind myself, preparedness isn't paranoia, it's survival. And still, sometimes at dawn, driving past that same station, I picture him, the man in the green jacket, under the lights, telling the next tired woman, "Don't look behind you." I just hope she hears it in time. I was 21, drifting through what I like to call a road trip, but what was really me avoiding my own mess. I'd dropped out of college that fall, telling everyone different stories. My mom got the figuring myself out version. My buddies got I'm seeing the country. The truth was simpler. I didn't know what to do next. So I got on the highway and stayed there. It was November 2020, the tail end of pandemic lockdowns. The highways weren't empty, but they felt quieter than normal. I slept in cheap motels when I felt like I could trust them, but plenty of nights it was just me and the back seat of my car. Snacks from gas stations, energy shots, and some fast food bags. That was my life. That night I was outside Dayton, Ohio, tired but wired on caffeine, the gauge edging toward empty. I took the next exit with a glowing gas sign, following it down a service road. The station sat behind a closed diner and a strip mall with more empty windows than lit ones. 2 pumps under a canopy. There were 3 cars in the lot. A pickup idling at the far pump, a white sedan near the side of the building, and a beat-up coupe parked by the dumpsters. The guy in the pickup scrolled his phone. The sedan had 2 men leaning against it, one smoking, one staring at his shoes. Nothing unusual enough to trigger alarms, just people in a low-lit parking lot. I parked at the near pump, slid my card, and set the nozzle. My eyes kept drifting to the sedan. Both men seemed half-hidden, more like they were waiting than passing time. Inside, the station was washed in that harsh fluorescent light that makes everything look sticky. Plexiglass at the counter, "Please wear a mask" signs taped everywhere. The clerk was a thin guy my age, beard just patchy enough to notice, hoodie under his uniform vest. His eyes gave away that he was paying attention to more than he let on. I grabbed my usual haul: a coffee that was mostly warm water and burnt grounds, a shrink-wrap sandwich, a bag of chips, and a bottle of water to balance the guilt. At the last second, I added one of those tiny energy shots. I set everything on the counter. The clerk rang it up without looking at me. I tapped my card, the machine beeped, and he slid the receipt into the bag along with a small folded square of yellow legal pad paper. His hand paused just long enough for me to notice. His face stayed blank. "Have a good night," he said. Normal words, flat tone. I walked to the little counter with the powdered creamers and sugar packets, tore the note open under the edge of my bag. 10 words. Don't go back to your car. They're waiting. At first, my brain rejected it. People don't slip warning notes to strangers. This was paranoia. But then I looked through the glass. The two guys had moved. One leaned against the hood of my car now, the other by the passenger door, pretending to chat. Pretending too hard. My coffee went tasteless. I kept stirring, acting like nothing had changed. I walked back toward the counter. "Bathroom?" I asked, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "Down the hall, red paddle key," the clerk said in his normal voice. Then quieter, lips barely moving. "Call from there. Stay on camera." I took the key. The restroom was single stall. I locked it, leaned against the door, and called 911. Told the dispatcher my name, the station, what the note said, what I saw. She asked if I was safe. I said yes. She said officers were 2 minutes out. 2 minutes feels like forever when you're counting breaths. When I came back, the clerk was bagging cigarettes for a woman in a heavy coat. He didn't look at me, didn't break character. Out the window, my car sat there unlocked. But the two men were still near it. One smoking, one just watching. The pickup at the other pump had left, which made the lot feel emptier, too exposed. I pretended to browse the jerky, buying time. My hands wanted to shake, but I kept them still. The clerk looked at me once, then back to wiping down the card machine. That ordinary motion was the only thing tethering me. Finally, headlights swept the lot. A cruiser rolled in slow, flashers pulsing. Another followed. The two men straightened. For a beat, I thought they'd just get in the sedan and drive. Instead, they walked toward the dark gap by the dumpsters and vanished into the tree line. The officers came inside, asked questions, took notes. One went out with a flashlight and found shoe prints near my car door, smudges under the handle. Nothing else. I gave my statement. The clerk gave his. When the officer asked if he recognized the men, the clerk said, "Hard to swear to faces these days." His tone was tired, but I caught what he really meant. This wasn't the first time. Eventually, they let me go. The clerk didn't ask for thanks, but I gave it anyway. He just nodded and said, "Watch your exits. If it feels wrong, it is." That line has stuck with me ever since. I drove off with the officers watching. The highway carried me out of Dayton, but my eyes flicked to the mirrors for the next 100 miles. For months afterward, I carried that little yellow note in my wallet. Not as a trophy, more like a map marker. Here you could have gone missing. Here you didn't. I'm an accountant, and I'm practical to a fault. The type of person who double-checks locks, saves receipts, and keeps jumper cables in the trunk. That's why what happened to me in March of 2016 stands out so much. It's the kind of story I would have rolled my eyes at if someone else had told it to me. But it happened, and I think about it every time I drive past an overpass in bad weather. I was coming back from a 2-day client trip in eastern Idaho, a small manufacturing firm I was auditing. It was one of those early spring weeks when the snow melts just enough to leave the air damp, but the nights still freeze over. By the time I left, the forecast warned of a heavy rain system rolling across the state. I figured I'd beat it if I left before dusk. I was wrong. An hour outside Boise, the rain came down like someone had dumped a bucket on the highway. Wipers on full speed couldn't keep up. My headlights only cut a few yards ahead, and every semi that passed sent up a wall of spray that blinded me for seconds at a time. I'd been driving long enough to know when it was safer to pull over than to push through. That night was one of those times. I spotted the outline of an overpass up ahead, a low concrete bridge carrying some county road over the highway. The space beneath it was dark, but at least it offered shelter from the rain. I eased my sedan onto the shoulder, just far enough under the overpass that the drumming on my roof softened. I shifted into park, stretched my fingers, and told myself I'd wait 15 minutes for the worst to pass. There's a strange kind of quiet that comes when you're in a storm but protected from it. The rain was still roaring, but under that bridge it was muffled, echoing. For the first time that day, I felt like I could relax. Then the lightning struck. It wasn't a close bolt, just a white crack across the sky. But in that instant, the whole underpass lit up like daylight, and in that flash, I saw a figure crouched by my front tire. I jerked upright, blinking at the darkness that followed. My rational brain kicked in immediately. It had to be another stranded motorist, someone trying to stay out of the rain, maybe checking his own car. My pulse was up, sure, but I told myself it was nothing. Except he was right against my car. Another flash came less than a minute later. This time I was staring directly out my driver's side window. Waiting. The figure was still there, crouched lower, hands close to my wheel well. Not checking his own car, touching mine. I gripped the steering wheel without thinking. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it. That the rain, the shadows, the lightning, all of it was playing tricks on me. But accountants deal in patterns. You see enough ledgers, enough discrepancies, you stop ignoring patterns. And what I'd seen was a man crouching exactly where he had no reason to be. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't call out. I just sat there, telling myself to stay calm. If he was some good Samaritan checking my tire pressure in the middle of a thunderstorm, then I'd owe him an apology later. But my gut said otherwise. I shifted into drive. My headlights flared into the rain, showing nothing but rain. I hit the gas. As my car rolled forward, I caught it again. Movement in the periphery. A shape pulling back fast, like someone darting out of the beam. Everything inside me sank. I didn't floor it. I didn't want to fishtail on the wet highway. But I accelerated firmly until the overpass was shrinking in my rearview mirror. Only then did I let myself breathe again. 2 hours later, the storm had calmed to a steady drizzle. I was 30 miles from Boise when I heard it, a soft thump, thump, thump from my rear tire. At first, I thought it was just the road surface, but it didn't fade. The sound grew louder, and my steering wheel started to vibrate. I pulled into a gas station off the interstate and stepped out with my phone flashlight. Then I saw 4 long roofing nails, driven at an angle into the tread of my rear passenger tire. Precisely placed, wedged in deep enough that they hadn't blown the tire immediately, but would work themselves further as the wheel turned. Someone had put them there. I drove the rest of the way home on the spare, hyper-aware of every shadow on the road. The next morning, I called the local police. They sent an officer, young enough to still be polite but already skeptical. He looked at the tire, shrugged, and said, "Could have been debris. Construction crews drop stuff all the time." I wanted to argue, but what could I say? "No, officer. I saw a man crouched by my car during a lightning flash, and now I've got nails in my tire." Even to me, it sounded flimsy. He filed a report, handed me a case number, and left. That was it. And to this day, I don't know what that man was planning. Was he trying to disable my car so I'd break down later, somewhere darker, easier to approach? Was he just messing with me? Was I one of many drivers who stopped under that bridge, one of many who drove away rattled? I don't have answers. What I have is the memory of lightning turning night into day, and the image of hands where they shouldn't have been. I haven't stopped under an overpass since. I don't care how hard it rains, because numbers tell stories if you look at them long enough, and so do patterns. And the pattern that night was clear. Someone was waiting for drivers like me to stop. And I'll never forget that I almost gave him the time to finish what he started. I'm 27 now, but this happened back in 2018 when I was living out of a van with my band. I was the guitarist, and we were just a group of guys trying to scrape by on small gigs and bar shows. Nashville was our home base, but we'd drive anywhere within a few states if it meant $100 and a place to plug in amps. People romanticize the life on the road, but the truth is it's mostly bad coffee, sore backs, and learning how to sleep sitting up. We had a white Ford Econoline van that smelled like sweat, pizza grease, and strings of old beer spilled on the carpet years before we bought it. It rattled whenever you hit 55. That van was home, rehearsal room, tour bus, and bedroom rolled into one. One night in August, we had just finished a set in a little dive south of Nashville. We were too broke for a motel, so the plan was the same as always. Find a rest area, crash a few hours, then hit the road before the sun came up. It was humid, sticky in that Tennessee way, where even after midnight the air feels like soup. We pulled into a rest stop off the interstate around 1:30 a.m. It wasn't empty. 2 semis were idling near the far end, their diesel engines humming like beasts at rest. A couple vending machines glowed by the bathrooms, throwing weak light across the lot. Not dangerous looking, not inviting either. Just one of those anonymous stops where you feel invisible until you're not. We parked under the single lamppost that worked, figuring the light would make us safer. That was our rule. Always park near light. The van's back benches folded down into a makeshift bed. I climbed in with 2 others, while the drummer stretched out across the front seats, his hoodie pulled over his face. We laughed a little, talked about how half the crowd that night was too drunk to notice our mistakes. The bassist passed around a bag of chips, and someone joked about the van being haunted by tour ghosts. It was just noise to cover the fact that we were all bone tired. One by one, voices died out. I don't know what woke me. Could have been the stillness, or maybe the fact that even in sleep my brain registered something wrong. I opened my eyes, and for a second I thought it was just a dream. Then I heard a rattle. It was the unmistakable sound of someone trying the van's back door handle. Not a single tug and done. It was like they expected it to open if they kept trying. At first I thought maybe one of the guys had gotten out to piss and was messing with us on the way back in. I whispered, "Knock it off." But everyone in the van stirred at the same time, groggy, confused. Nobody had moved. The rattling continued. I sat up slowly, trying not to sound scared. Who's back there? No answer. Just the same metallic jolt as the handle jumped in its socket. I'd always imagined that if something like this happened, the intruder would bolt the moment you made noise. That's not what happened. Whoever was outside didn't scare easily. My shout didn't change a thing. The handle kept jerking, like someone was determined to get in. The van suddenly felt way too small. 4 grown men crammed together, pretending we weren't listening to a stranger trying to break through thin metal a foot away. Our drummer muttered a string of swears from the front seat, half asleep and scared. The bassist whispered, "Just start the engine." But the keys were in the cup holder near the door closest to the rattling. None of us wanted to move. I banged the side wall with my fist and yelled louder, "Get the hell out of here!" Still nothing. The rattling just kept up. That patience was the worst part. If it had been frantic, desperate, maybe I could have chalked it up to some drunk guy or junkie. But this was different. It was controlled. Whoever it was, they were willing to stand there in the dark, testing our nerves as much as the lock. Minutes stretched. I kept looking at the faint light coming through the windshield, praying to see headlights. And then, like someone upstairs finally threw us a bone, a car pulled into the lot. Its headlights swept across the back of our van. For a split second, shadows moved. Someone tall, stepping back. By the time the beams moved on, the handle went still. None of us dared to check the window. The passing car circled once and parked by the vending machines. When I finally craned my neck to peek, the figure was gone. Just the empty lot. We didn't wait to see if they'd come back. The drummer slammed the keys into ignition, and we peeled out so fast one of the chip bags rolled under the pedals. None of us spoke until the interstate lights swallowed us up. We ended up at a 24-hour diner miles down the road. We ordered pancakes and coffee we didn't really want, just needing somewhere bright and human. Nobody laughed, nobody teased. When I finally looked at the clerk pouring coffee, I realized she was giving us the same look we'd probably give anyone walking in pale and shaken at 3 a.m. Like we were carrying something heavy we weren't going to explain. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep in the van without jerking awake at the faintest creak of metal. We stopped parking at rest areas altogether. Truck stops only. Cameras, clerks, people moving around. That became non-negotiable. It's been years, but I still check door handles twice before bed, even in my apartment. My friends joke that I'm paranoid, but they weren't there listening to someone calmly try to pull open the door you were sleeping against. Here's the part that sticks. Whoever it was never ran. I yelled, we made noise, the whole van stirred, and they just kept going until headlights scared them off. So who does that? Was it some thief hoping for a quick grab? Someone with worse intentions? Or, and this is the part that crawls under my skin, was it someone who knew damn well we were inside and wanted to see how long it would take before panic broke us? That's the piece I'll never have an answer for. And maybe that's worse than knowing. If you also thought the scariest part wasn't the gas station creeps, but how fast everything turned when you let your guard down, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me in the comments, would you have stopped? And if you think you're safe once you finally get home, you haven't watched this channel enough. Click now to watch 4 scary home invasion horror stories. Because sometimes the knock on the door isn't a stranger, it's your nightmare starting. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.